Hey, all, welcome again to another recap of Bible study. This is Mark chapter 5, and I hope you're doing well. There's a lot going on in this chapter, and we had good discussion. I was trying to think how I was going to kind of encapsulate the discussion we had because it was really, it was more back and forth and less just me talking. And so I want to try to encapsulate best of what I can. I think the this chapter does translate well into sermons, and so what I want to do today is try to stay away from that and try to look at the at what's going on, especially. All right, so in this chapter 5, we have basically three main events, and the second two are enveloped around each other. The first has to do with the demon-possessed man, the demon's name Legion, and then the hemorrhaging woman and Jairus, the elder or the chief, one of the leaders in the synagogue's daughter. All right, so let's start with the first here. Looking at chapter 5, they went across the lake to the region of, and again, Lake Sea. I like sea better for the word thalassa, but it's the Sea of Galilee. They went out across the sea to the region of the Gerasenes. So this is going to a Gentile region. And when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. So the first question is, what's going on here with this guy coming from the tombs? Like, tombs, of course, we associate with death. Is this man dead? He's certainly left for dead if we think about him in terms of the way that the people of the town see him. But let's kind of go on here. This man lived in the tombs, and no one can bind him anymore, not even with a chain. And so this guy had been bound, and now he's been exiled to the tombs, and somehow that's safer. They couldn't bind him because every time they bound him, he would break the chains. And one of the questions that comes here is, why would this man need to be bound? Because it doesn't say he hurts anyone except for himself. This is a story with a lot of details, but that's one that we never see, is the reason that he's bound. And most of the time we just assume, well, he's been bound because he is possessed by a demon, and we never like go one step further. But it's an interesting question that the text is silent on, is why he must be bound. Like, we see that he has got prodigious strength because he can break chains, but strength in itself is no reason to be bound. So what is the real reason? Has he hurt somebody? It doesn't ever say. Or is it just that he's different and super strong, and so therefore unsafe? No one was strong enough to subdue him. Okay, so someone that is strong like that, they need to subdue him. They need to keep him in place because they're afraid of him. They can't do it, so they send him to the tombs. Night and day among the tombs in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. So there's a sense here that he is being tortured by this exile, or is, and the question is he being tortured by the demons within him, or is he being tortured by the exile, or is it a little bit of both? And here we don't have any details about him hurting anyone else, but we have details about him hurting himself because of this situation that he's in. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's names, don't torture me." So, like, there's the torture here. Don't torture me anymore. I've been tortured enough. Don't torture me. For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." And so it's always that question here about what is going on and what the presence of demons is and what do demons mean, and all of that kind of stuff. And we talked about that for a long time on Tuesday. And it's an interesting thing in a world where we do tend to demonize those things that we do not like. We like say, that the opposing politics are demons, and both sides tend to do that to each other, it's a dangerous thing to throw around. And we talked about that a lot. How does this translate to our world? And we talked about the politics. We talked about mental illness. We talked about a lot of different things, and I'm not sure that anything really helps us to understand what a demon is, except this is look at how the demons make the people that are not somehow possessed function. That's if we can't understand the demons, maybe we can understand the people that are come into contact with you, not the one possessed, but the ones who come in contact. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at here, that these people in some way are dead too. And I'll get to that a little bit as we go. All right. So then Jesus asked, "What is your name?" And he says, "My name is Legion." Um, he replied, "For we are many." All right, so there's many demons here. Is the Legion thing? Of course, the Legion is the name of the division of the Roman army that was occupying the world and conquered the whole world. That was the big Roman military advancement, to have that kind of disciplined number of soldiers all working in one way. Is this a reference to the Romans and the occupation? The Roman occupation and kind of the demon side of it, and the way that the people are kind of dealing with this thing that they can't get rid of. Is that part of this picture? Maybe. The other side is it's he says, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Is it just an empty reference to number? It doesn't necessarily have to be political. It could just be a reference to number. But either way, there's something to that. And he begged Jesus again not to send him out of the area. So we get it's funny, why would the demon beg Jesus? And what does it say when Jesus grants him what he begs, right? Because this is what he says: a large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs and allow us to go into them." And he gave them permission, and the impure spirit came out and went into the pigs, and the herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. So that's a pretty crazy scene, right? And so that the demon was in the man, it goes into the pigs, and immediately all of the pigs kill themselves. And so there is this major economic hardship, because it's 2,000 pigs are all of a sudden dead and drowned and not around anymore. And so that's a kind of a terrible kind of thing here. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what happened. And when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Right? So how interesting. They hear about the pigs, they hear about the countryside, and they see this man that they've had to chain and bind and then exile and throw away and go to sleep every night listening to his screams and crying out and wailing and hurting himself on the stones. And now he is healed, and instead of being joy and happy for him, of course they're afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. And then the people began to plead with Jesus, just like the demons pled with Jesus, "Do not torture me," whatever. The people began to plead with Jesus to leave the region. "Get out of here. We need you to go. We cannot have this kind of thing going on here. We had the problem solved. The man was in the tombs, and we did not have to deal with it. Now all of a sudden, they have to deal with it, and they don't want to, and that's a problem, right? Like, and so there's all of this kind of stuff going on. Are they that hurt by the pigs economically? Is that why they asked him to leave, or is it the fact that they had solved this problem and therefore had kind of dealt with it and were dealing with it, and now all of a sudden they are free from that and they don't like that? it's interesting that to be free you wouldn't like it. But again, we've seen this pattern in Mark before. All right. So there's a lot going on there, and I'm gonna hold off on kind of making the claims about it till I introduce the other two parts, because I think there's a reason why these are together. One of the things we did notice was, of all of the stories so far, this one had the longest description. Having 20 verses is one of the largest encounters up to this point in the Gospel of Mark. Usually everything's so fast. This is large, and most of the folks said that they said, well, it must be important, and it's good to think that. And as weird and strange as it is, um, I think it's very important too. So here we get to the next part. Jesus raises a dead girl and heals a sick woman. Um, so we're going to be introduced to Jairus here. When Jesus had again crossed over, so from Gentile land back to Judea, back to the land where the Jews are, when Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her that she may be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. All right, so, okay, leader in the synagogue is coming to Jesus. Now, all the leaders in the synagogue up to this point have been plotting to kill Jesus. Now, all of a sudden, we have um, one of them coming to Jesus. Is it desperation? As a father myself, I'd say that would be a desperation. Forget about everything else. Forget about all the pretenses. If this man can heal my daughter, I'm going. That's a big piece. Now, I did skip over something, and I did it on accident here, and that is the man that had legion in it. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Now, it's interesting. I want to make sure that we didn't jump over that, because it's interesting to note that this is the first man that Jesus tells to go tell the story. Normally he says to keep quiet. This one he tells to go tell the story. Is it because they are in Gentile land and it's okay to tell? That's one difference. Is it just a different time? What is different? It's one of the kind of interesting questions that comes out of that. All right, so let's go back now that I put that in. All right, so Jairus he's on his way to Jairus' house to save the daughter. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. All right, so all of a sudden we have this problem. Woman is hemorrhaging 12 years. Nothing that she's tried has worked, right? She suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all that she had, all her money, everything, yet instead of getting better, she got worse. And when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. And immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. All right, so there's a lot here. She's free from suffering. She's been trying all this time. Thing after thing after thing has left her not necessarily despairing, because she wants to try one more thing. I think there's a sense here of what is being alive, right? Being alive is struggling through all of the problems that you have, and still being beaten and broke down by reality, trying thing after thing and having all of them not work. And instead of despairing and losing hope, she has faith, reaches out, touches the garment, and is healed. That is such a powerful moment. The fact that she would try, and the fact that it would work. Jesus's response is interesting. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him, so he feels that, right? He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" You see the people crowding around you, and yet you ask, "Who touched me?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. And then the woman, who, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Right there it is, freed from suffering. Again, the same thing. She was freed before Jesus even knew to do it. That's the power of faith and the connection with Jesus. It's really amazing. And the fact that she would even try this after all 12 years of trying and failing, and it getting worse. I mean, think about all that we struggle with and how many times it just beats us down, and it leaves us either cynical or broken or depressed or whatever. And this woman is still fighting. I think that's life. That's something that we're looking for here, because we're going to come into it again with this Jairus's daughter. All right, overhearing what they said, Jesus said, "Don't be afraid, just believe." Because the reason Jesus says that is, while he was speaking about the woman, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader, and they tell him, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" It's, in other words, a waste of time. And Jesus tells all of them, "Don't be afraid, just believe." Don't be afraid of what's going on. You've just seen this woman be healed like this. Look at what I can do. He did not let anyone follow except for Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion. People are crying, they're wailing, they're how interesting is it? This is very similar to the way that the guy that was possessed with legion was, crying and wailing. And he went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and all this wailing? Be still, peace, be still," just like the sea, just like legion. The child is not dead. Look, this is the facts. The child is not dead, but asleep. And look at how they react, right? The healing of legion, they react with, "You need to get out of here." When Jesus says this, they laughed at him. They laughed. There's no way that this could happen. And this reminds us of Isaac, right? When Isaac's birth, Isaac's name means he laughed, because when they told Sarah and Abraham that you're gonna have this baby in their old age, they're like, "Yeah, you're right." But yet here's another miracle that's about to take place, right? The child of promise. This child is in need. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and went in there where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. So she gets up and walks around. She was 12 years old. Interesting to note that the woman was suffering with hemorrhaging for 12 years. This girl is 12 years old. There's a parallel there of the number. Is it possible that they've been both dealing with illnesses for 12 years? Even if she hasn't been dealing with illnesses, maybe she's been ill of the sense that the people are ill, which is they don't have faith and they're dead inside because they have no hope, and they react in this horrible way. It's interesting. We've been seeing Jesus as the one who's crazy, but now we're starting to see that to not have faith, to not be alive, is to not be alive. To be beaten down and cynical and despairing is death. To be so cynical, to say, you've just seen this healing, you say, "Get out of here." When Jesus promises a miracle, you laugh. When all it is a picture of this kind of cynicism, and cynicism brought by dealing with all of the struggles of the world and not understanding what Jesus's proclamation is, right? Sins are forgiven and the kingdom of God is near. Again, we got to remember that that's the proclamation. That is what turns dead people into alive people. Dead, cynical, despairing into hopeful, fighting, faithful warriors like the woman, and like hopefully this little girl will be. And like Legion, the guy that doesn't have Legion in him anymore can be out proclaiming in the Decapolis and everywhere else. Um, he gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this. Okay, right? So the guy healed from Legion can go talk, but they're supposed to stay silent. interesting. I think it has to do with the proclamation and being free from sins. There's something to this. Not just miracle, but alive instead of dead, not and alive to life. It's what I said. These are three stories about living and death, what real life is, and then what death is. And I'm not talking about existing and then not existing. I'm talking about there's this pre-death life, pre-death before you die, how you are living, and then there's pre-death death, right? There to be alive but being dead inside, broken, despairing, cynical, all of those things. That's what Mark is about, and it happens again and again. We've seen it. These three stories kind of deal with that. The people that are ailing are the alive ones because they're the ones that Jesus heals. The ones that are around the bystanders that don't believe or are cynical or are that want Jesus to go away or are afraid, those are the crazy ones who are actually dead inside. It's amazing. For the last 2 3 chapters, Jesus has seemed to be the crazy one. Now all of a sudden, everyone else is seeming to be crazy because here is Jesus performing this after another, one after another. The things he says comes true, and the people are either afraid or angry or cynical or upset. None of them are celebrating Jesus coming into these situations. All right. Well, that's everything. I think in this chapter, I'm sure everybody could have a lot of different thoughts on it, and people did, and we discussed a lot of things from demons to faith and other things in the Bible study. Make sure if you're interested in that, to come on Tuesday mornings. But I'll keep doing these, and I hope that they help, and I hope that they give you a little of a background of where we are. On Sunday, I'll be preaching on this chapter, maybe all of it or maybe half of it. I'm not sure yet exactly where. In some ways, I want to look at it all, but in other ways, these three stories in themselves are really powerful too. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I will see you again next week and see you Sunday. In Jesus' name. Good night. Bye.